You started yawning roughly 3 months before you were born, while still floating in the womb, and scientists caught it on ultrasound. Which is strange when you think about it. There's no air down there to gulp, no sleepiness to fight, no boring meeting to sit through. So what is a yawn actually for? It turns out almost everything with a backbone does it. Humans, cats, snakes, even birds. And here's the part that should bother you a little. After centuries of staring at this everyday reflex, scientists still aren't entirely sure why we do it. And here's the thing that makes it even stranger. Yawning isn't some quirky human habit you could chalk up to boredom or bad meetings. It's everywhere in the animal kingdom. Cats do it, dogs do it, birds do it, reptiles do it, fish do it, snakes yawn. This is a reflex so ancient and so deeply wired that it shows up across a vertebrate species that haven't shared a common ancestor in hundreds of millions of years. So whatever yawning is for, it mattered enough to stick around through an enormous stretch of evolution. That's the puzzle scientists are wrestling with. If something is this universal, built into us before birth, shared with creatures as different from us as a lizard or a parakeet, it almost certainly has a job to do. We just haven't figured out what that job is, which means every yawn you take is quietly an unsolved mystery. So let's start where almost everyone starts, with the explanation you've probably heard since grade school. The idea goes like this. You yawn because your blood is running low on oxygen, or maybe too high on carbon dioxide, and a big gulping yawn floods your system with fresh air to set things right. It's tidy. It's intuitive. It even feels true when you yawn at the end of a long, stuffy meeting. There's just one problem. When researchers actually tested it, the theory fell apart. They gave volunteers extra oxygen, then extra carbon dioxide, and watched whether their yawning changed. It didn't, not in the way the theory predicted. People kept right on yawning regardless of what was in the air. So the explanation everybody knows turns out to be politely wrong, which leaves us back at the mystery, only now with one obvious answer crossed off the list. If it isn't about oxygen, then what on earth is that enormous reflex actually for? Here's one of the leading answers, and it's stranger than the oxygen story it replaced. The brain, like any hardworking machine, generates heat, and it performs best within a narrow temperature range. The idea, championed by researcher Andrew Gallop and colleagues, is that a yawn is essentially a built-in cooling mechanism. That enormous gape, the deep stretch of the jaw, the rush of cooler air, all of it may help draw heat away and nudge the brain back toward its ideal operating temperature. To test this, Gallup's team tracked how often people yawned in different conditions and found that yawning frequency lined up with brain and ambient temperatures in ways the theory predicted. It's elegant, it's testable, and it's still just a hypothesis, not the final verdict, which is the honest, slightly frustrating truth about yawning research. We have a promising lead, not a closed case, and it leaves the most social puzzle of all completely untouched. Why on earth would a yawn be catching? So why would a yawn be catching? Here's where it gets strange in the best way. Contagious yawning is real, and researchers have documented it again and again. You don't even need to see one. Hearing a yawn does it. Reading the word does it. Thinking about yawning does it. Which means, statistically speaking, a number of you watching right now are already losing this battle. There's no oxygen exchange happening, no shared air, no practical reason your jaw should follow a stranger's on a screen. And yet it spreads through a room like a rumor. Scientists have spent decades trying to pin down why a reflex would behave socially, leaping from one person to another with nothing but a glimpse or a suggestion. The honest answer is that the mechanism isn't fully nailed down. But the simple fact that it exists, that a sound or even a single sentence can pull a yawn out of you, tells us yawning is doing something more than ventilation. It's wired into how we connect, which raises an even better question. That better question is who exactly catches a yawn and what it says about them. Because contagious yawning isn't evenly distributed. Researchers have linked susceptibility to measures of empathy and social closeness, with some studies finding that people yawn more readily in response to those they're emotionally closer to. Family triggers a yawn faster than a stranger does. That finding reshaped how scientists think about the whole reflex. Yawning stopped looking like a quirky bodily hiccup and started looking like a quiet signal of connection, a tiny automatic measure of how tuned in you are to the people around you. So the next time someone's yawn pulls one out of you, it isn't just contagious. In a small, strange way, it's a sign you were paying attention to them at all. And here's the loop in all of it. Just reading about yawning, hearing about it, picturing it is often enough to set one off. So if you've yawned even once during the last few minutes, congratulations. You proved the whole thing in real time. A reflex older than your first breath, one you were already practicing in the dark, long before anyone watched.